Everybody, welcome back to another episode. Nobody's counting. I'm not counting. Peter's not counting. Nick's definitely not fucking counting, but he's counting the money that I pay him. Nah, it's not. He's doing the community stuff. So if you want a free podcast studio, come to Nick. Just put his name on the cubicle wall, free blowjobs, and fucking start putting his number down there. Why not? Anyways, everybody, welcome back to another episode. It's been a while, and yeah, it's just life's getting in the way, work's getting in the way. But this is not a podcast about me. It's about you, the viewer. So if you'd like to sponsor me, please. No, don't. Anyways, episode 28, 29, who cares? Peter fam, welcome back.
Thanks,
We've done full circle, episode number 1. You came on as my first podcast guest, and I was, a bit shy and nervous and timid. Maybe, and then I've grown a bit since then, and now you're back because I can't find anybody else. Nah, you're back in the area, so I thought we might use the time to see how you're going, what's new, where you're up to in life, and I guess what's going on in the world of Australian legalese, maybe the international legalese, because you're a resident lawyer. If I get into trouble, I'm calling you. Here's something for you.
Okay.
If I got in trouble with the police.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, you got one phone call. You can call your lawyer. Can I call you? Would you be able to get me out?
Listen, man, I would advise that you would call somebody who's an expert in criminal law if you're in trouble.
Yeah.
I sue the police a lot for damages, for breaches of the various statutes that govern what they're allowed to do and not allowed to do.
Yeah.
So if you get falsely imprisoned by them, call a criminal lawyer. I can recommend some.
Yeah.
And they'll get you out, and then we'll sue them and get you damages.
So you can sue police.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I like that. I don't know if it's cool or not, but man, money is good here in today's day. Anyways, I just poured you a rakia. There you go.
Thanks,
from
bro.
our non-official sponsors from DNA, who never got back to Nick's email. I'm still cut about that. Yeah. Anyways, cheers, bro.
Cheers, brother. Thank you for having me again.
That's it. You're welcome. Thank you for coming on again.
It's a pleasure, bro.
Anyways, what's been going on since last time we talked? We delved into a bit of like what is law, what is law as well, LORE.
Yep.
We went a bit into the COVID vaccines, mandates, what you're doing then. So let's expand on that a bit. See where you're up to in life, because you're an interesting character, and see if anything else has happened in that world that I haven't been paying attention to. So. First of all, how have you been? Where have you been and how have you been?
I've been on a tumultuous journey of personal and relational growth.
Interesting.
Moved into state with my family after feeling like I needed to do so, not necessarily interstate, but move away from the general area where I grew up, which is Western Sydney, for probably 5 or 6 years. There was a whole process of getting to a point where I felt like I was ready to move with my wife and kids.
Yeah.
So we moved to Queensland in the end. Thought we were going to go to northern New South Wales, ended up in the Sunshine Coast. And we've had which is a real blessing.
Yeah, God bless. Beautiful.
So it's been not what I expected or what I thought I was going to get by moving to where we moved, but it's been fundamentally necessary for my own journey and for the journey of my family, just in ways that I couldn't have expected, but God understands more than we do. So I'm in the process of that very violent but necessary transition, because we've been there for 9 months. We had our son 6 months ago. Beautiful little boy, born at home.
Nice.
In a pool in the living room.
Yeah.
Came out in 5 minutes.
He was ready.
Yeah, my wife just breathed him out. It was amazing.
Did you keep the umbilical cord connected for a while?
We did, man. Yeah, we kept it connected for probably about close to an hour. And then not as long as some people do, but long enough to where we felt like he had what he needed.
Yeah, that's what I hear a lot. Did you see like a change?
Yeah.
In the actual umbilical cord, like it starts, you see all the nutrients and whatever else goodness comes out.
Yeah.
So I've always wondered why they cut it so soon.
Why do they medicalize birth? I think that there's...
it's a business. You got to go to the hospital.
There's a great documentary called The Business of Giving Birth.
Oh, interesting.
We watched before we had our first kid. And it's very eye-opening in terms of the ways that the system that we live in treats birth as a medical event as opposed to a natural, divine, sacred sacrament. But I'm not an expert. But
Neither am I.
Yeah, I've had the experience of being a father and experiencing two very different births. Where my daughter, we planned for a home birth, went through a process to have a home birth, but then she ended up being born in a hospital, and then my son was born at home, and the contrast is a powerful teacher.
Yeah, okay.
And I can see the impacts without fully understanding them yet, but I can see the impact that being born in a comfortable, safe environment with safe, comfortable people, with familiarity with the voices that the child is used to from the womb, a lack of artificial harsh lighting, a lack of latex plastic gloves pulling you out, a lack of unnecessary medical intervention. I can see how that has informed the state of being of my son, who's very calm, very secure attachment to his mother and to me. There are differences that I can detect between his childhood so far and my daughter.
But also, would you say that it was a calm pregnancy? Second time around?
Honestly, not really.
No?
We had just moved. We moved while my wife was pregnant.
Yeah.
So, no, we were going through it. We were going through a serious, intensive process of relational growth, and growth only comes from turmoil.
Yeah.
So I was worried about that. I thought, well, gee, I don't know if I should have put my wife through so much stress while she's pregnant by moving and everything that comes with that. But it's something I've thought about. And so far he's extremely calm, and his temperament is so happy. He just smiles and laughs all the time. He's a good sleeper.
Yeah, good.
All of this is a contrast to my
Yeah.
daughter, who's now, she's 2.5. She's a beautiful little girl. She's so...
Oh, she's gorgeous.
But her first 18 months for us as new parents were pretty tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's all a blessing, because those tough times with my daughter also helped to inform our parenthood journey, and our less anxious, less uncertain state is also informing my son's childhood as well. So it's complicated, man, being a parent.
It is. I'm not...
Just doing our best.
I haven't done it yet. Nick's done it. You going to do it again, Nick? He wants another 6. I hope his missus hears this. He wants 6 kids. Get ready.
How many do you have? Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
None of mine have come forward yet, All my debaucherous times, I might have a couple of kids yet there. You never know. But they haven't come back. They'll come back when I'm number one podcaster, in the world. Yeah, that's it. Hey, Daddy's what the fuck? It's like, you're beautiful. Who's your mum? I can't remember. Yeah. No, we'll see. It's coming. I think it's an important time, but you can't rush these things, and you can't force them either. I think it's just Definitely. There's a natural divine timing in all of that. So, I mean, you left me in the mountains. I was like, bro, I got a brother here. It's cool. We're going to do farming together. We're going to set up this lifestyle. And you pissed off.
Yes.
I was a bit cut. No, I wasn't cut.
A lot of my family and close friends felt very upset, angry, betrayed. Still feel.
I didn't feel that. I'm telling you now. Me? No. I was like, oh, fuck, our friend's gone. But your family, let's get into that.
Oh, look. It's very difficult to leave your father's tent, as Jordan Peterson would say, or to leave the reef, to leave the place where you grew up with your, and culturally, there are certain obligations that I have as the eldest son. My parents are both, my father's 86. He can't take care of himself. I was previously playing a really active role taking care of him. My mum can't really take care of herself very well either. She's got really severe arthritis. So my parents need a lot of support. I've got a brother and 2 sisters. My brother and older sister both have kids. We're pretty close, but me moving away is a thing, which very understandably anybody who's close to me will feel upset about, they'll feel angry about, they'll feel, why are you leaving us? What does this mean for our parents, and close friends as well, especially because the reason that I left might be interpreted in a way which is very easy to take personally, because the reason that we left, and I was honest about how I communicated it, and this was why it took us so long to go, because I felt a lot of guilt and shame about leaving the people that I love, but I knew I had to go. And the reason was that without growth you die, and I was stagnating badly here. I wasn't growing anymore. The majority of the people that I was interacting with and weren't communicating with me on a level of a shared understanding of particular values and, you know, entering into the journey of parenthood and wanting to raise my kids in a particular way, but struggling to find, there are examples of people here that this doesn't fit, but most of the people that I had in my awareness and my circle, not for lack of trying, were not raising their kids in a way that was very similar to how I want to raise my kids.
Fair enough.
And there's the actual environment where, and this is just my perspective, but my perspective is that there is an intensity here, which makes it very difficult to operate in a way which is aligned with who I believe we are. It's difficult to live as a fish if you're in poisonous water. It's difficult to, and that's a metaphor from Darren, who's been on this podcast.
Yeah, shout out to Darren, he's a good bloke.
He is, yeah. Who I live with Darren now in the same house. So we're trying to create an environment which helps facilitate the journey of growth that I'm talking about. I didn't know that moving away was going to put me through the ringer in terms of personal growth. But that's exactly what needs to happen, because if I'm going to achieve the things I want to achieve and actually live in the way that I'm calling for myself and my kids and my family, I have to be the guy who can actually hold that responsibility. I have to be that guy, but I'm not that guy yet. So God's like, hey bro, you're calling for this experience. You want a certain life for your kids. You want a certain life for your family. You want to be more autonomous. You want to be more independent. You want to be more self-sustaining. You want to live in accordance with the truth. But you're not there yet. You need to go through some shit and become the guy who can hold that. That's how I frame what is happening in terms of the move that we've gone on. That's what it feels like. So there are parts of myself that I have spent part of my life neglecting that are coming to the surface and kind of shouting to be heard. And as I become more intimate with those parts of myself that I was previously ashamed of or just didn't have much love for, thought of as negative, thought of as bad, I become a fuller version of who I am, who's capable, therefore, of actually doing what I'm supposed to do. So my personal life was holding me back in terms of not only my vocation, but who I actually am. And I had to make a change in order to continue along my journey of self-growth. And it has been a drastic change, which has triggered a lot of growth. But there's a certain amount of unpredictability when you make a major change, which has informed an experience that wasn't what I expected. But then, nevertheless, I can feel the wisdom in it. I can feel the divinity in it. I still feel like I'm on the right path.
Okay, give me an example.
Living in a house with other people, I'm somebody who one of my coping mechanisms, which I developed as a child, has to do with really caring about what other people think about me, having a constant desire for love and acceptance, because as a kid I didn't get much of that. And one of my coping mechanisms when I feel shame is to retract myself, hide. But when you're living in a house with other people, you can't really hide. You're always being perceived by somebody. So if you're somebody who's sensitive to a feeling of being judged, even if you're not really being judged, then living in a house with other people makes you confront that. I knew about this before I went there, but the renewed experience of actually cohabiting, which comes from a desire to actually create a village. Like, we left with the intention of creating a village, which financially we couldn't do here for, as one of the practical reasons why we left. It's cheaper up there. But in order to become the guy who can actually live in the village, I have to become more comfortable with the idea that not everybody's going to like you. And I have to become more authentic and more willing to be vulnerable, willing to be obviously upset sometimes, obviously angry sometimes, obviously stressed sometimes, the parts of me that I would suppress and hide, because if there's other people there, you can't hide. So that's one example, but there's like 400 of them.
No, fair enough. So for example, what would you do before when you were feeling all these things? What would you do in your previous life?
Lots of things, but escapism is a label that covers a lot of them. So I would disengage from the feeling in lots of different ways. It could just be eating too much food. It could just be isolating myself. It could just be engaging in things like not drinking, but some substances that I might have.
Okay.
It could be it could just be something as simple as just wasting time, procrastinating.
Okay.
But what I wasn't very good at, although I thought I was at the time, it's like there's levels to it, but I thought I was good at sitting with the feeling and letting it pass through me, but I actually wasn't as good as I thought it was. And there are so many steps to the journey of becoming comfortable with who I am and allowing the parts of myself that I have spent most of my life repressing and pushing away to actually have a seat at the table, but making sure they have the right seat at the table so they're not actually like steering the ship, but still inform a authentic expression of the totality of who I am based on the experiences that I've had and possibly what's happened in past lives as well.
You've had a lot of time to think, man.
I do think a lot.
Yes. Yes, fair enough.
I do think a lot.
And would you say, like, I mean, speak honestly, open here if you want to, but would you feel that you started getting triggered a lot when you moved into this household and there's more people there and you're like, okay, oh, this doesn't feel right, or okay, this is happening there, or I can't do this anymore, I have to go down this path. So it actually...
Definitely. I'm only talking about my own experience intentionally, but there were lots of different things that were triggering me. Part of it had to do with examples like the one I gave, which have to do with my own journey. But part of it had to do with my relationship with my wife, where she has her own journey going on, and she has had things come to the surface for her, which I won't go into, but she's had things come to the surface for her that, being my wife, impacts me. And then her patterns and my patterns are like having this dance, and we realize that there are parts of our relationship that we weren't very cognizant of that maybe aren't very healthy, different communication styles that we didn't really realize were creating a transference that over time would become a problem. And moving was like a catalyst to bring some of those things to the surface, when I think if we stayed here, they would have remained buried under the surface for much longer, probably to rear their heads in a much more violent way. But the change created such a perspective shift and put so many spanners in the works, so much difference compared to the pattern of what our life was, that a lot of those things reared their heads and just started shouting at us. And it's like, shit, like I'm not ashamed to say my wife wouldn't mind. We had to go to counseling, relationship counseling, incredibly helpful. Just I've done a fair bit of shadow work myself. Not a huge amount, but I've done enough to where I have a level of self-awareness that allows me to understand that when I'm being triggered, it's something to do with me, and I have some tools that I use to see what it is, but I have a long way to go. But I had never done relationship counseling before, and this counselor was able to, in tandem, recognize some of the patterns that were existing in the context of our relationship, which have allowed us to then stop doing what we were falling into at the start, which was blaming each other for things, almost beginning to become a bit resentful of each other and the parts of each other that came to the surface in the context of a pretty difficult period, and instead identify that there was something over here that both of us are on the same team in terms of addressing. That was the major shift that happened, and it was a really helpful shift for us. And I can tell that my relationship with my wife has become much, much stronger through the process of difficulty and challenge that we encountered by way of completely uprooting ourselves and changing our life. And I can also tell that if we hadn't done that and these things hadn't come to the surface at the time that they did, they would have been much, much worse later, and it could have been disastrous. So I'm very grateful for the fact that these challenges have arisen, and grateful for my wife who's willing to box with me and figure it out, dance with me and figure it out together. But I think every relationship goes through turmoil and struggle, especially
Of course.
long-term relationships. And there's a quote that really helped me, which was, I can't remember who the quote's by, but people can Google it. But it's by a relationship counselor, and she said that she doesn't trust any relationship that hasn't been to the brink of devastation, romantic relationship that hasn't been to the brink of devastation. And that speaks to the continuous choice to love someone over time, even when you go through periods of struggle, which are inevitable in any long-term relationship.
I find that interesting, but you'll find relationships where it just works and you don't have any of that.
I'm sure that exists. You know? Look, I'm not sure that exists, actually.
You've turned into a relationship expert. Let's go further. Tell me.
No, I'm not a relationship expert.
No, but
otherwise I would be.
No, but you've gone through your own,
this.
which is interesting. But what I find is interesting, this dynamic of going through there and this counselling. And it's sort of like a psychotherapy.
It is psychotherapy.
But you're living with a psychotherapist.
I am living with
That's what I mean. So I'm like, do you think that in a way that energy, I would think that energy there with Darren would somehow influence and bring upon these types of things as well. It's just energetically there. Definitely. So you got your energy, her energy, his energy. So it's just like, fuck, this is going to come up.
Darren and I are very, very old friends, brothers. Yeah. And we've never lived together before. We've always been very close. Living with a psychotherapist has been a thing for me, definitely. And our relationship is certainly also going through its own period of growth.
Of course.
And it's definitely the case that living with a psychotherapist has forced me, it feels like, to address particular things and notice particular things, sometimes because he brings it to my attention that I wouldn't otherwise have addressed or noticed in the timing that I have. There's an aspect of it that's very challenging, which I speak openly with him about, for me. There's an aspect of it that's extremely helpful, because it's very helpful to have somebody else shine a light of awareness on your own stuff. For me, it is. I think it is for everyone, because it's very difficult to assess yourself all the time.
It is, and I don't think you can.
Yeah.
I don't think you can. You need someone from the outside to say, hey, do you know that when this happens, you do this?
Yeah.
Or do you know that you realize that you do this?
Yeah.
That's a pattern you're like, and if you're not in the ego and you're truly, I guess, humble and seeking, you'll find out, oh, wait a second. Okay. That's quite valid. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Did you ever find that when people were not exposing, but they were pointing out these flaws, would you feel like a bit defensive on the inside?
Oh yeah, man. I'm very sensitive to criticism. My father,
me too.
Growing up, who, by the way, I now understand much more being a father myself, but he was very critical. He was a great father, because I gotta balance this. Amazing father, and actually one of the primary positive influences on my life, but he was also very critical and quite angry. And that, along with other aspects of my childhood, seeded a sensitivity to criticism, which still affects me on a pretty profound level. Okay. I have more of an awareness of it now. It's sitting more so at the right seat at the table, but I still have a lot of work to do. But I'm very sensitive to something I know about myself. I'm very sensitive to criticism. It's related to what I was saying before about really caring about what other people think about me. So I'm very sensitive to criticism, and I get very triggered when I perceive that somebody is criticizing or judging me. And that comes from my own criticism and judgment of myself, and my own struggle sometimes to accept the parts of myself that I see as worthy of criticism. And one of my journeys over the past couple of years has been becoming more intimate and understanding of the parts of myself that I previously, and still am to a lesser extent, but previously was very critical of. Learning to love and understand those parts, and then accept that they're a part of me, be more willing to show them to the world instead of trying to project an image of perfection that doesn't exist, and then operate accordingly, because none of us are perfect. But yeah, I am very sensitive to criticism. So I do get triggered when I perceive criticism. But with the awareness that I have now, it's not what it used to be when I was much younger, where I'd freak out. It's like okay, I know I'm sensitive to criticism. I know that I'm probably interpreting this in a way which is distorted as compared to what the person actually intends. And there's a process of sitting with it, allowing the feeling to pass through me, taking time, being okay with the fact that I'm triggered, understanding that a trigger is a window into myself, possibly communicating with the person and saying, hey, this is how that made me feel. What did you actually mean? Well, let's talk about it sometimes. But to answer your question, yes, do get triggered when I perceive criticism as a general aspect of my character.
I get triggered by criticism quite a lot, even in the job that I do, man. You know, it's even anything, relationships, from parents, friends, and especially work. It's like for whatever reason, something along the line happened, and now when you get criticized, but I feel like it's unfairly criticism for me.
Okay.
If I don't mind like fair criticism, like Nick tells me, Stodge, your podcast is shit. This and this and this and this and this. Fair enough, I'm listening. But if I know that it's unfair and they're taking it to another level, that's when I get really, really angry. But still depends also loved ones. If loved ones criticize me, regardless what type of criticism, actually it just depends on the emotional time. Like if I can decipher that it's truly coming from a good place and the person means well, I have no issue taking that criticism.
Yeah, definitely.
But if I feel that there's some type of malice behind it, if I've got something else, I've got a real problem with that. So it comes down to probably being bullied as a child or some type of aspect in regards to that, which, you know,
bro, if somebody's malicious towards you, I'd say that's a different thing. Like if your detection is accurate and you can tell that.
You said distorted, so sometimes I had to jump in. Sometimes it could be a distorted lens.
Definitely.
You know, but continue down that path.
Well, it's usually a bit of both. Often it's a bit of both. Where if you feel that somebody's malicious towards you, it's very natural to be angry. Anger is the guardian of integrity. You know, if your boundaries are being crossed, you're being disrespected.
I like that.
That's a Xavier Dagba quote. Xavier Dagba is a amazing man who is a shadow work practitioner. I'm using that phrase. He's basically a psychotherapist.
I've heard of him before.
I did let me tell you this.
Tell me, please.
The first time I was ever a guest on a podcast, I'll even say what it was because I'm very ashamed of this, but I'm being more open with what I'm ashamed of.
Go for it.
I was a guest on this podcast called Here for the Truth with Joel Rafidi.
Joel, yeah.
Gerasimos Stylianessos, I think is his surname.
I know this one, yep.
Really cool guys. Joel has an amazing page as well. It's a great podcast. Yeah. But I was a guest on that podcast. It was the first podcast I was ever a guest on.
I know this story. Go for it.
I was so shaken by how terribly I felt it went. Like I made a few very bad decisions in my preparation for the podcast, coming from my insecurity.
Yeah,
like, I have to do a good job as a guest on this podcast. You know, it's a pretty big podcast. I've never been on a podcast before. I want to project a certain image to the world of a particular competence and a particular image that I thought people would accept and love. So I made some very bad decisions. And, to try to cover the parts of myself I was ashamed of, but that did the opposite, and it actually amplified my insecurity.
Yeah.
And I felt so uncomfortable in the context of being a guest on that podcast that it actually motivated me, with the help of Darren, actually, who said to me, "Hey, bro, I know that's not you. You should probably
I've seen that podcast before, and you're like a fish out of water, just
bro,
like
I was tripping out. It was bad. So that actually led to me, okay, I have to do something. And I started doing shadow work with Xavier and began a new phase of my journey. So that was, I think, 2021. I began a new phase of my journey, which involved a greater awareness of parts of myself that I didn't have a very good awareness of, which those parts of myself are what led me to make the decisions that I made in preparation for that podcast, and also led to the experience I had, where that discomfort came from a part of my being realizing in real time while I'm on a podcast, which, you know, you can't edit, like you're live, we're live, realizing in real time, bro, the image that you're projecting to the world isn't actually authentically who you are, and then becoming terrified by that, and then not knowing what to talk about because I wasn't actually just being authentic. and then like starting a point and then forgetting why I started the point and forgetting what I was trying to say. And then like, it was just this terrible mess. And that experience was so uncomfortable that it led to me doing what I'm calling shadow work, which is basically another name for psychotherapy. But that 3 or 4 months with Xavier significantly altered the course of my life and helped me significantly to become a bit more of my, I'll use the word embodied self, or a bit more of my authentic self. And also to realize that that's a long journey that I'm relatively at the, sort of at the beginning of, and just getting further along as I go. But I'm still pretty young and I've got a long way to go in fully understanding myself.
100%. So I was going to say, so you were terrified of how people would perceive you on that podcast and how you dressed up and prepared for it. But the things you fucking come onto this podcast like this, you don't care what's going on, mate. Am I not important?
Oh, look.
It's just a joke, bro.
Yeah. Well, look, when I came on your podcast for the first time, it was the most comfortable I've ever been on a podcast. And the reason is because I already knew you.
Yeah.
There's lots of reasons.
Of course.
I had done a bit of work in myself, but I already knew you, and it's being in person helps a lot. I've done a lot of podcasts that aren't done in person.
Oh, it's fucking bullshit on the Zoom.
Different.
Yeah.
But the relationship that we already had helped a lot because I felt much more comfortable.
Of course, man. Of course.
Yeah.
But it's not an easy thing, and that image of how you project yourself, it is distorted. How you, until you really break it down, you don't know how people perceive you. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't actually matter at all.
Matter.
Sometimes at work, like I'm worried, there's a couple of things for myself. Like you're gunning for a promotion, you want to be gunning that you got things under control, but then things spiral after that. Yeah. And they're going out of control. You're like, well, fuck, then I throw that stuff out the window. Yeah. I go back to basics on who I am and I do things the way that I do them. And I don't really care too much about what other people think. The only problem is when you're in that type of world that, you know yourself, you're corporate construction, tier 1 construction, it doesn't go that way. People, you'll always find, and I've noticed, I'll always find enemies. And the usual ones that are enemies are the people that have some kind of, they're going through what we're going, but they're not coherent to it. They don't know it. They've got their own very distorted lens and they've got their own issues. So it's very interesting. And one thing I wanted to bring up was that I appreciate the ability that I have, which is an empath, that I can feel. I'd be writing a text message I'd be sitting there, I'd be feeling like this deep anger come out of nowhere, and then the boss would come, not the boss, and I've got no boss at work. I've got managers, but no bosses, would come out, they're angry, or I'd get a text message from someone telling me that they've had something bad happen to them. So I appreciate this ability that I have as an empath. But fuck it, it's very difficult when you put yourself out there in these corporate environments or in any type of work environment with so many people. And what I found is, I've gone on a complete tangent, which is fine, but there's no quick fix to people to say to protect your energy or to learn how to be an empath or whatever. It takes time. Same as doing your shadow work, to learn how to process all that type of stuff. Yep. That's all I really want to say.
Good things take time, man. Good things take time.
That's it, like a good pork roast. How you going with your food? How you going with your eating, mate? You told me you're on a 36-hour fast. What's going on, mate? You feeling all right?
Feeling great, bro.
Yeah, you are. Yeah. If I don't eat for 36 hours, I might kill someone, mate.
Fasting is a very powerful practice, bro.
I don't fast, bro. Sorry. Tell me, what's going on with your fasting?
Fasting was one of the ways that I first started to wake up to myself in life. Along with a general focus on nutrition. And so like when I was in my early 20s and teenage years, I was very disconnected from myself. I didn't know who I was. And there were lots of practices and modalities that came into my life that started a very long process of becoming more comfortable with who I was, and also discerning a bit more about what I'm supposed to do here. One of the most powerful practices in my life is fasting. There's a reason that it's a constant in many cultures and traditions around the world. It's I'll tell you a story. Aristotle, the famous philosopher, wanted to visit the ancient Egyptian priests, and the Egyptian priests said to Aristotle, "You can come and study with us, learn from us. You can come and share knowledge with us, but first you have to fast for 40 days." Aristotle never fasted before, but fasting was a pretty prominent practice in ancient Egypt. So Aristotle did it. He fasted for 40 days and he went to visit the Egyptians. And what he said about fasting was, I used to understand things with my mind, but now I begin to understand things with my body and my spirit. Fasting not only has amazing health benefits, because you know, get an expert on to talk about this stuff. I'm not an expert, but it allows your body to enter a process called autophagy, where it begins to eat dead cells, dead matter, inflammation goes down, tumors, anything that's not supposed to be there, the body starts to consume and repel as a result of this process of autophagy. It's one of the best ways of getting rid of the spike protein from the mRNA drugs. But it also gets rid of most things that the body's not supposed to have. But on a spiritual level, it does many things. We use food as a suppressant and as an escape. And when you take that away, everything that you're burying with your 3 to 6 meals a day, which is not how our ancestors ate, comes to the surface, and it's right there in your face. And then you have two choices: eat to suppress it or face it. It changes your relationship with food. Okay, let me talk about myself. I won't generalize. It changed my relationship with food, where I began to understand that when I thought I was hungry, I wasn't necessarily in need of food. It was either a craving, it could have been dehydration, it could have been a stress response, but the actual quantity of food that we need to consume is a lot less than the consumerist culture we live in would have us believe. And the reason I fasted for your podcast, brother, out of respect for you, is because I know when I fast, I do it with work as well. If I have a court hearing or a mediation, I'll fast because you're sharp. Digestion takes up 80 to 90% of the body's resources. And when your body's not digesting stuff, especially shit stuff, you're very sharp. You're very clear. There's a lightness. You're more in tune with God. You're more in tune with your soul. There's an addictive feeling that you have. You know, you can't waste away and never eat, but there's a balance that can be found where food becomes more of a fuel factor, a nutrition factor, as opposed to something that's emotional or driven by false understandings that have come to us from a commercially motivated system.
Just like me going to a vending machine and getting a Kit Kat.
Well, look, I love fasting, but I'm definitely still somebody who emotionally eats. I'm definitely somebody who still eats a Kit Kat now and then. I try not to. And
of course, it's terrible.
I don't eat that stuff anywhere near as much as I used to.
Well, okay. Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, that's all right. I'm just saying, and I'm not some like fasting like whatever, but I do use it as a very important practice.
You look like Bob Marley, so you're something. Yeah, every time I look at you. But okay, so this 36-hour fast, how far are you going to go?
Oh, this one, I'm doing it for this podcast.
So after this,
I'll probably go to my mother-in-law's house.
But what are you going to break it with? That's important.
Ideally, you would break it with food that's very easy to digest.
Yeah.
Whether it's fruit, maybe some cooked vegetables. I usually go for fruit. Fruit is the easiest food to digest. This time, probably not. It depends what's there. You know, I'll accept the gift that's given to me.
But is there a certain meal that you would sort of think that you might even prepare yourself when you go?
If I was intentionally doing a fast for my physical and spiritual health, which I try to do relatively regularly, I'll plan what I'm eating in the days leading up to the fast. I might fast for anywhere between 36 hours and 7 days, and then I'll usually eat. So the general process I would follow, which is informed by the Sinclair brothers, who people might be able to find on Instagram, 2 Aussie guys who essentially teach and preach fasting, along with other things. But and there's lots of fasting gurus and information out there. It's a very common practice, and it's becoming more popular and more widespread. Anyway, generally I'll fruit into the fast for around half the amount of time that the fast is, and then I'll fast either just on water, just on juice. Sometimes there'll be a little element of dry fasting in there where you don't drink or eat anything, but I haven't done too much of that. It's very hard. I've mostly done water fasting, and then after the period of time ends, again, I'll fruit out of it. So I'll have fruit, ideally light fruit, hydrating fruit like watermelon or, the melons, grapes, things that aren't too dense, for half the period of time you're fasting, and then you can go back to more heavy food that is a bit more work for the body to deal with.
Do you eat heavy food at all?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I only ate fruit and vegetables for a very long time, about 6 or 7 years. In the past year and a half, I've gone back to eating meat. I eat mostly fruit and vegetables still, but I've been bringing meat back in. I try to avoid dairy. I try to avoid sugar. I try to avoid processed foods.
Of course.
But I don't always succeed.
That's okay.
But I try to avoid them. Yeah.
What kind of meat and how do you cook it?
Yeah, I try to get clean meat that hasn't been injected with hormones or antibiotics or vaccines. Try to get grass-fed meat. I like red meat, chicken, fish. Just the source of the meat is the most important thing, especially if I'm giving it to my kids. So I just try to get clean meat. Yeah, it doesn't, the cut or the type of meat, I don't really eat pork, but other than that...
Not many people eating pork, like. Do you still eat pork, Nick? Why? Why not?
I'm off it.
Why?
Because I seen how they raise it and stuff.
But you went, okay, we won't mention it. You went to a particular farm that it's like that's difficult. Not every farm is like that.
No.
All right. And the reason why I bring up pork is because it's starting to get a bad name, and I'm a Slav, okay? We're traditionally pig farmers, okay? So I love my pig. All right, I'm going to back them up. But a lot of people are coming out saying, oh, they got parasites. I'm like, check where you're getting your fucking meat from. But that's why I'm just asking the question. No offense to anyone, but I'm very interested in how you would go and cook and process your meat, because the other day, for some reason, we bought a brand new oven, pyrolytic, fucking 120 centimeters or 90 centimeters. It's a big fucker. And mum's got issues using it. Oh, it's not heating up properly, it's this and that. You know, I said, fucking bro, listen here, bro. Get out of the way. Made a fantastic lamb roast. Took me a while, but I was present 100% in everything I was doing there. Made the sauce, made the gravy, did everything from scratch. And fuck, eating it actually hit the spot so hard. And you only need a little bit. And I was done. I was full. I'm like, I've got a path to go down that revolves around food. Not due to my weight, not due to the fact that I'm overweight or anything like that, but I have a deep passion about the way that food and flavors make me feel and how I look forward to them in life. So that's why I just wanted to find out a bit more. And in general, it's like, do you look forward to when you're about to break your fast? Now you've been doing it for 36, 48, 52, 27, 89, whatever hours, and now you're about to break it. Do you feel like this? Do you feel like this sense of excitement?
The first?
Do you feel the saliva? I'm being serious. Yeah.
Yeah. The first, it depends how long the fast is, but the first part of the fast. So, one of the benefits of living with a brother is we can encourage each other and hold each other accountable. You know, like if you have community in general, it's easier to do hard things. So the intention that we have is, because we haven't been perfect, but every 12 weeks we're meant to do a 7-day fast. We have done a few of them together, Darren and I. The first day, sometimes the first 2 days, is by far the most difficult. During that time, it's like I'm fighting not to go through a drive-through. Like I'm fighting not to eat whatever's on the bench.
Okay.
Like, it's a fight. It's hard because all the shit's coming up, especially if I haven't done a fast for a while. But it gets to a point once you get through the literal withdrawals that you experience, because food is an addiction and there are withdrawal symptoms that you go through when you fast. You get headache, you get feelings that you just have a physiological effect on you, and you just have to deal with it. All you can do is breathe, possibly drink a cup of water, depending on what kind of fast you're doing. Once that passes, which it does pass, if you get through it, there's that feeling that I'm referring to comes, especially if you've done a few fasts. The first couple can be pretty rough. But if you've done a few fasts, you get this lightness that comes in. Like right now, I'm not struggling. I don't feel like eating. I don't want to eat. It gets to a point for me where this is great. How long can I go? Like I'm operating in a more beneficial level. I'm a better father. I'm a better lawyer. I'm a better brother. I'm a better son. And it does with the 7-day fasts. Some people fast for much longer than that. I haven't gone more than 7 days. But with a 7-day fast, I get to the end. I'm like, do I even need to eat? Like, but you do, I think. But it gets to a point where the cravings go away. And I don't really necessarily feel like, oh, I got to eat. I do enjoy eating. I do like food. It tastes great. It's one of life's pleasures. But the honest answer to your question is the first couple of days I probably am like that, salivating. And then over time, that fades and the other benefits outweigh that. And breaking the fast becomes a thing where I don't want to mess up what I've done because it was so hard as well. Like it was hard to get to day 7, and breaking your fast on something that's really dirty can ruin everything you've done.
Definitely 100%.
So you don't want to wreck it. But I've definitely had fasts where I've broken the fast early and failed as well.
Gotcha.
For sure.
All right, let's change gears a bit now because you're making me hungry. Like legit, I haven't eaten that much today. I know, it's a big shock to the world. What's going on in the legal realms, mate? What are you doing? You're still working as a lawyer? You're fucking winning cases? Is the vaccine mandate still about? You fighting COVID? Are you fighting something else? What are you doing at the moment?
Yeah, man, I'm still running my arts method. It's still, as far as I know, the only independent human rights law firm in the country.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, it is cool. I mean, look, it has its challenges. I hope there's more. Like, we need some more law firms. Doesn't have to, like, human rights is just a label. Doesn't really mean anything, right? But we need some more lawyers and law firms that aren't conflicted through an existential reliance on government funding.
Yeah, of course.
Or government clients, which is kind of the same thing, which is why most of the work I do is the work no one else will do, because they're like, we can't do it. It'll be too offensive to our government clients, or it'll be too controversial. How's work going? It's going great. I'm not doing much COVID related stuff anymore, thankfully.
It's done. Is it done? Is it finished? Is it gone?
Well, it depends how you look at things. Because as you and I know, COVID was a piece of a much broader puzzle.
Yeah, it was
a manifestation of patterns,
what's
societal patterns. That have been percolating for a long time and will continue to intensify and percolate. I feel like a bit of a mercenary. Generally, what will happen is it's a very small firm. It's myself, and I've dabbled in the past couple of years with having one junior lawyer working for me and some admin support. And we will generally be approached by somebody or a group of people who have some kind of extremely controversial, monumental, like gray area type issue.
Yeah.
And they'll want us to help. No other lawyers will help me. You're the man for the job. Can you do it? And I'll get pulled into something, and that'll take over my life for like a year or 6 months. And I'll do a few other things on the side, just trying to help individuals. And then that thing will pass, and then I'll move on to the next thing. That's kind of what it's been like. I recently finished one of those monumental things. I can tell you about it if you want.
I would love to hear about it.
Okay, so there are the system that we live in is so manifestly. Let me say this in a different way. The system that we live in my opinion, is not built on any foundation that is compliant with the law that governs our species, that our ancestors had a much better connection to than we do today.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of that, there are grave injustices occurring internationally all the time, because the system that we live in propagates those injustices. It's actually built on those injustices as well. But one of the things that I was recently dealing with was Australia as an entity. So Australia is a colony. The country of Australia is a colony, a British penal colony. It started off as a prison colony. And that's because the British, when they came here, didn't treaty with the people that were here. They came here on the apparent legal basis of terra nullius, which obviously was a lie, and still don't have any, in the context of international law, don't have any lawful justification for being here. So in terms of international law, the occupation of Australia is illegal. It's unlawful. There's an unlawful basis for it. That's just what international law says about a country occupying a piece of land that people already live on. However, there is a general appetite for the colony, the Australian government, which I'm a citizen of and which I work within as a lawyer in the British common law system. There is an appetite to make amends to some extent with the original people of this land. And one of the attempts at doing that, you could say, is the native title system that operates here, where the original people of this land can make an application to the British colony and say, hey, we've been living on this particular piece of this continent for 50,000 years or 80,000 years or 100,000 years or whatever. We can prove it through our cultural practices and our law, which is interrelated with the land itself. You know, we can tell you about the history of the vegetation in this place for 50,000 years. We can tell you about the ceremonies, which are themselves depictions of how the land has changed over time, which correlates with the science of how the land has changed over time. So there are ways of validating that relationship, and they can now make an application to a court, an Australian court, and say, we want native title rights over this portion of land, which started with the Mabo No. 2 case in the High Court, which was the first instance of the High Court recognising that original people on this land have a claim to sovereignty, which they say coexists with the British claim to sovereignty. I would say that the British don't actually have a lawful claim to sovereignty.
Yeah.
The High Court sort of admitted that as well. They just said, we can't formally say that, because if we say that, it's going to question the legitimacy of the whole system, which gives us our authority, so we can't go there. They almost said that in an indirect way. So they said there's competing sovereignties on the land that we live on. A lot of original people, just for completeness, and I would sort of fully understand this and say that I agree with it without being indigenous to this land, that the native title system itself is inherently fundamentally flawed, because given that they have a pre-existing claim to sovereignty or allodial title or whatever you want to call it on this land, they shouldn't have to ask for permission from the people that came here to have a claim over the land that was originally theirs. But let's leave that aside for a second. So the thing that I got pulled into was a group of elders from a country, Aboriginal country, a couple of hours near Townsville, approached me, and they started talking to me about the native title system. And they have an experience where they've put in lots of native title claims over particular areas of their traditional land, their land, and they've therefore had to deal with that native title system. One of the aspects of the native title system is land councils, government-funded land councils, whose function is supposed to be to facilitate native title claims for the original people of this land. So, you know, most of the original people of this land, because of what's happened to them over a long period of time, are extremely traumatized and don't have the resources, and I am oversimplifying things, but generally don't have the resources to go through 2 years of litigation and a native title application. So there's these bodies set up who are funded by the government, who are supposed to represent them in the context of applying for native title. Most of those bodies, okay, let me be more fair about how I'm saying this. The information that I've received from lots of different elders around the country is that a lot of those bodies are corrupt or have become corrupt.
I've heard that too.
They're made up of non-original people lawyers who make money off the native title system, and are interrelated with various corporations who benefit from the land upon which native title is being claimed. There are things happening like those land councils negotiating with and coming to agreements with corporations absent the consent of the original people, doing things that they don't really have the authority to do, doing things they're not really supposed to be doing. It's not the point of their existence. There's also a general lack of respect and appreciation for the actual law of those people and what those people require in terms of that area of land in order to continue to practice their culture. So these elders sought to divorce from the government-funded land council and to expose the corruption that was occurring there. And they came to me and said, can you help us? Can we go to the federal court and expose this? And I was, along with my friend, who's an Aboriginal barrister, where we went to the federal court, and for the first time as a private law firm, because it's never happened before, because no one would do it because it's controversial and would jeopardize your funding if you were relying on government funding.
Understood.
We tried to expose what the land council was doing in relation to this group of elders, and put in the evidence the documentation that we had and affidavits. So I went out to the country and we took affidavits from all the elders, some of which can't, they don't have computers. Like senior elders, 90 years old, who I'd sort of be doing the affidavit with them, and just trying to show the country what is happening in the context of what's supposed to be a system which benefits the first people here. It's supposed to mediate between what is genuinely the competing interests of the original people of the land and the corporations and the system that does exist here now, which is a reality. Like, it's just what it is. There's now a lot more people here that aren't indigenous than the indigenous people here. But the system, whether it had a benevolent original intention or not, which is definitely debatable, certainly isn't operating in a way which seems to actually benefit anybody other than original people who are willing to essentially bypass, distort, or put up for sale their original culture and law in order to benefit financially from the corporations which are pillaging their land. So that's that was one of the more recent things that I was doing, but that is kind of temporarily wrapped up, and I'm in a process of transitioning to other completely different human rights related cases.
Can you talk about that case in relation to, was it successful? If you need, like, how did it go on a high level?
We're still waiting for a judgment. So we went to hearing. We did the hearing in the federal court. We made our arguments. We wrote our submissions, put in the evidence. The judge is taking a long time to put out a decision, which is always interesting. We're still waiting. If the judge finds in our favor, then it would be a pretty monumental precedent for all of the other groups of elders around the country, of which there are many who have been complaining about this for a long time, because it would expose what's going on, which is one of the main benefits of litigation, because litigation is really hard, really stressful, really expensive. A lot of people can't access it, and therefore settle their cases privately. And I settle most of my cases for my clients privately as well. But the benefit of actually having a judgment published is everybody can read it and access it, which is one of the good things about our legal system. There is still some basic level of appreciation for transparency.
Even the ones that are settled?
Well, if you settle a claim informally, the incentive for the defendant is that you sign a deed of settlement, which usually has a confidentiality clause in it and a bar clause. So that's the whole reason they settle, like, without honoring.
So just to get this straight, so a group of elders were not happy with the land council, wherever that area was, and pretty much you were taking them to court to expose them.
Yeah, there was a bit more nuance to it, but that's a good way to say it without giving too much detail, so it can be identified.
Fine. Of course.
That is basically what it was.
I just always find the arguments, like, you have two sovereign people here. You have the originals and you have the British that came here, and then you have the rest of us that came to Australia to live. Yep. So I always find to myself, so, okay, well, where do I belong then? I was born here, so what do I do? But regardless, putting that aside, it's sort of like the argument is, well, there's a confliction in sovereignty, and there's like two there's two sovereignties here. You have originals, you have these ones. So it's like, which one is it? Well, I mean, isn't it clear cut? It's clear cut who was here first, and then the other ones come here on the basis that there was no one here. Do they use that as an argument, saying, well, they thought that no one was here, so that's why they came and they seeded and they put the flag down, they made a colony, but sort of, is that even an argument? Like, why doesn't it go back to originals were here, these guys came after?
Because it would fundamentally challenge the legitimacy of the Australian government. There is a movement going on. So when the British came here, that was the justification they used, terra nullius. No one's here, we can come. Because that is a justification in international law. If there's nobody somewhere, you can go.
I agree.
That makes sense in a way, right?
But then you see the original running over there, and you started gunfights with them. You know what I mean?
Well, there's clear evidence there's documented evidence that the British already knew before they came here that there were people here.
Fair point.
There were lots of other nations that the Dutch had already been here and written to the British all about what they saw. There was a lot of interaction between the indigenous people here and other cultures from around the world.
I know, but for me, it just comes back down to a single point, which is then the whole thing's a fraud. And I am an Australian citizen. I love my country. I do like some aspects of the government, not everything. But regardless, it comes back to the fact that it's clear fraud.
Yeah,
It's clear. It's crystal clear. I'm playing devil's advocate. So I like to play devil's advocate to stay impartial, but you look at it's like, well, at the whole thing, and even then they said, okay, so they say, all right, let's set up a system where we'll set up these land councils and we do native titles acts and we start giving them all these benefits. Fair enough. Okay. But in my opinion, and what I've been told is that a lot of them are corrupt. So there's still, let's say you do this good, but it's still, as you've noted just before, it's not doing good. It's still not getting back down to the fundamentals of the traditional people and the elders, especially in there.
There's a lot of aspects to this. So one thing I say is a poisonous tree bears poisonous fruit. So there's this idea that, get over it. Like, we have to move forward. There's people here that, there's so many people here now and we have to find a way forward, which is true. There's a practical reality that we are met with that we have to address collectively and move forward. However, the lack of honesty and acknowledgement of our history as a nation, which there is still pervasive, because even the High Court in Mabo number 2 was kind of trying to play it both ways, where they're like, look, we can't deny that terra nullius is a lie. We can't deny that the original people here have allodial title or native title, whatever you want to call it. They have a clear right, even by our definitions, which is the international law angle and the common law angle. They have a clear right to be here. They have a clear claim to this land that we can't actually cavil with. We can't actually challenge. But they couldn't say it. They couldn't say it. And that lack of honesty not only poisons the original people, because they're still being affected by what's been happening for what isn't actually, if you have any kind of appreciation of history, the get over it arguments, like 250 years is a very, very, very short time. When you're talking about grave injustices like rape and murder and intentional poisonings, intentional massacres, the people that I was representing in that case, they have on their land a rock called Nigger Bounce. They call it that because when the British came, they threw their ancestors up until only let me get this right, maybe 70 or 80 years ago, they would throw their ancestors off this cliff onto this rock to kill them. So the people call it Nigger Bounce. So like these aren't things that you get over.
No.
Like imagine if you're a father or mother, if you, as a human being, these injustices, they stay in your bones and your blood.
It's generational.
You.
It stays in your DNA.
So what you were saying about the nation that we live in, right? Like, I agree with you. It's the lack of honesty, the lack of acknowledgement about the parts of the history of this place which are dark. And I'll actually connect this to something I was saying about myself later. That leads to a pervasive poison which results in a sickness which affects everybody. Because if you have a system that is built on bloodshed, built on violence, built on dishonesty, it's not going to be sustainable, and it's not going to lead to a life for the people who live within that system, which is actually in alignment with our highest way of being, or with who we are as human beings.
Yeah.
It's like if you have a relationship with somebody, like I've got a relationship with my wife, if I don't acknowledge, let's say we're having an argument and I don't acknowledge the truth of what started the argument, I just try to talk about other peripheral stuff and say, get over it. It's not going to go over it. It's not going to be a very productive conversation.
Not. But then because you can talk about this for hours and days. All of us can, because there's so much there. But the bare basic is, what do you do to fix it? What do you do to fix it, and what is right, and how do you go about that? Because that's just like sort of like if I was to be made special counsel, I'm going in there, you need to go fix up all of this stuff here, find out. So the first thing I would go then saying, okay, what would you like us to do? What would you like me to do? Where would you like me to go? What are your problems? So how do you fix all of this?
Can't fix it. What I think, so there's a couple of things I'll say. One is that if any kind of relationship is ever going to be repaired, honesty is a fundamental element of that repair. Yep. But leave that aside for a sec. In terms of the angle of how do we move forward, because I don't think that anybody living today should be personally ashamed or guilty about what happened in the past.
Fair enough.
I think that's a regressive trick, a red herring, which actually sends, especially like European people, in the wrong direction in terms of how to be honest and address what's happened. Because if you're an individual who's living today, your ancestors did stuff, maybe depending on where you're from, but everybody's ancestors did stuff, and it's complicated, and shame isn't really a productive emotion. But what we can do is, and this is where law comes in, pursuant to my heritage and the Kemetic system that I follow, which I believe is actually a reflection of what many indigenous people from around the world follow. So if you go back and look at your own ancestors and you understand what was the system of law that my ancestors followed, study that, you will find that most of those people had a particular interpretation of a fundamental truth which informed the way that their societies operated and functioned. One of the biggest problems with Australia today is there is no fundamental agreed upon set of principles which inform the way that society works. And it's also, we're moving further and further away from that, where now everything, like this postmodern approach that's going on, there's no such thing as truth. Like there's your truth and my truth and Nick's truth and this person's truth, and everyone's wrong. And you're also not allowed to disagree with anybody.
Yeah.
So the lack of a foundation means that everybody is divorced from anything that could productively create a community that moves towards something that is true and right. There has to be such thing as truth, because without truth, we're all just floundering around there's nothing worth doing or achieving if there's no truth. You just meander around at the whim of whatever influence or whatever ideology comes in. So where am I going with this? There's, pursuant to my interpretation of truth, which comes from the connection that my ancestors had, which again is very similar to what everybody's ancestors had, including the British, like everybody. If you're in a place where there have been people practicing a particular system of law for a very long time, there is an obligation to understand and appreciate that system of law, because that system of law is intertwined with the land itself.
Yeah.
And if you're in discommunion or disharmony with that system of law, then you're in discommunion and disharmony with yourself. And you don't actually have a connection to yourself as a human being, just as you don't have a connection to the land that you're living on, which we used to understand as a species was extremely important, to have a connection to the habitat in which you're living. So in Australia, we have people from all over the world who are disconnected from their own heritage and law and don't have any understanding of the original law of this land. And so we're directionless. Where do we go? I think a useful step would be for individuals to gain some form of understanding of the system of law that their people propagated and respected and upheld. This is something I love to study, so I can say with some degree of confidence that every culture around the world, if you find out what your ancestry is, they told the same stories which espouse the same moral principles based on the same law, just in different ways, different perspectives of the same truth. That's why there are so many similarities between the major religions, which are themselves distillations of older stories and principles which are very similar. If everybody did a journey of self-discovery about what their ancestors were saying was true and what the law was, law just means truth. It's a Latin term that means it comes from a Latin term that means immutable truth. Then understand something about the law of the land we're living on, which is how we can begin to repair the relationship with the original people here by just acknowledging that their law, which is very similar to my law and your law if we understand it, but their law is the law of this land. They are this land. They've been here for that long. Their DNA is intertwined with the soil. So it's about understanding the law of the land that we're living on, understanding our own law, and then we can begin to have a conversation that makes sense. As opposed to getting caught in all the bullshit division, and because it's very easy to get caught in, this person did the wrong thing, this person's my enemy, like that's what the media does, that's what the education system does. It turns everything into a polarity, us against them, creates division between us, so we don't look at what's actually happening. But as soon as you begin to form a relationship with your own heritage, as soon as you begin to form a relationship with the land, with natural law, you could say, then there's immediately understanding and connection. And then you can begin to talk about productive ways of moving forward. But we need a foundation to work from. And that foundation needs to be some form of agreed upon principles. Every society that's ever succeeded throughout human history existed for a relatively decent period of time. They've all fallen, but has existed for a relatively decent period of time. There's been a very strong set of agreed upon principles that everybody can come back to, so you can tell when a person or institution is veering off course. If you don't have that, things fall apart. That's what we're experiencing today. There's no set of agreed upon principles that we're operating in, partly because we started as a prison colony without lawful foundation and without any uniform set of rights that we could all look to and agree upon. So now the courts and the institutions just say whatever they want because we don't have a very strong set of agreed upon principles to come back to.
Interesting. And fucking a lot to digest there, man.
Yeah.
We're gonna wrap this one up, man. Any final words? Any final comments? You wanted to say? You wanted to bring something back to? You were talking about something. You want to bring it back to yourself? Let's go.
Okay, that'll be my final comment because it will connect.
You love going full circle. Let's do it.
Well, there's the original part of the conversation, which is very personal. Now we're talking about law, right? Yeah. So as a nation, we are very reluctant and seemingly terrified of addressing the dark parts of our genuine history. Because whatever your perspective is on history, which there are different perspectives, dark shit happened. Like there was death and devastation and violence, and there's a lot of pain that exists on this land because of that. In the same way that I as an individual was talking about my proclivity to avoid the dark parts of myself because it's painful to look at and sit with, and so I'll find ways to avoid doing that. We as a nation are doing the same thing. And as a nation, when we become more comfortable with the dark parts of our history and just give them the right seat at the table, they don't have to steer the ship. Just acknowledge that they exist, be honest about what they are, and then we can start thinking about moving forward productively. Just like when I do that on a personal level, it allows me to move forward in an authentic way. So that's the connection. It's like what the individual is the collective and vice versa.
That's fantastic. No, that's fantastic. And there's a lot of gems there. People can get a lot of information from that. And really, God bless you, man.
God bless you too, bro.
Yeah, and you always leave me in a sense after the conversation of like I have to go, it's a deep sense of questioning in a good way, a deep sense of understanding and looking at things in a different sense. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for coming on for round 2 onto the podcast. Man, we'll see you, I guess, next time you come down from the top end there. And so if anyone wants to get in contact with you, still same email, give a shout out to yourself. Where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me. Easiest way is probably just to go to our website, which is www.myartsmethod.com.au. We're on all the socials and stuff as well, but if you go to the website, you can contact us directly and tell me your incredible story if you want.
I might need a fucking lawyer after all these things, but I'm going hard on TikTok now. I'm going hard on everyone telling... I said that if we just mentioned transgenderism one time, this thing would blow up.
I wanted to talk about that.
Well, welcome back to episode 31. Let's go. All right. What do you want to say there?
Oh, yeah, there is an intensified and intentional restriction on people's ability to question particular things in society, such as that. I'll just give you one example. How much time do we really?
Just go for it, man.
Give me a boundary, just 5 minutes.
Go for it, bro. I'm not going to put it. Just go for it.
I'll tell you a story.
Tell me a story.
A true story. So there's a breastfeeding expert named Jasmine Sussex. She's a woman, obviously. She's
is she?
Well, yeah. She's
Are you sure?
I'm sure she is a woman. Okay. Yeah. I'm not 100% sure. Let me tell
you. Did she do
Are
her genes of a woman?
Yeah, she's a woman. So
okay. So her genes proved it.
Yeah, huh? She's a very experienced breastfeeding expert. She helps women with issues with lactation and so on.
So basically, just hold the baby there. You get your squirt, bang. That's right there.
Tangent, but a lot of the aspects of the society we live in have removed the simplicity of that equation, and it's
fair enough.
So okay, leave that aside.
All right.
She's a breastfeeding expert.
All right.
She feels passionately about women's rights. She's a breastfeeding expert. It makes sense. She cares about women. She's a woman. And she made some public comments about a new practice which has arisen in the past few years, where chest feeding, which is natal biological men who are transitioning into, women, are taking particular medications which cause their nipples to produce particular substances which aren't breast milk.
This is fucked. Go for it.
The science says that it's mostly pus and some other things like that, and they're experimenting with giving it to kids. So she came out and said that's experimental. It's inappropriate. Men can't breastfeed.
No.
So there are new laws that are being passed since 2013, predominantly.
By who?
Well, ironically, Julia Gillard was the first female prime minister, was the first instigator of these laws. Leave that aside for a second. But there's vilification laws, which are laws. So that first of all, they changed discrimination law. So it's not just about sex and disability and race anymore. It now includes gender identity. And that's what Julia Gillard did in 2013. And the legality of that is questionable, but I don't want to talk for too long because we're wrapping up.
It's okay, bro. Go for it. You've perked my interest.
Okay. So I'll tell you then. So there's an international treaty, the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. It doesn't mention gender identity. It's about women, and it's supposed to eliminate discrimination against women.
Okay, all right.
And
We all
Australia,
love women. We can support that.
yeah, women are very important. They're
Extremely
the
important.
portal through which we enter this reality.
I was going down a different path, but okay.
Okay. I would say something like
All right, there.
that. Julia Gillard changed the Sex Discrimination Act. She amended it such that it no longer just protects against discrimination against women, but also includes gender identity. Constitutionally, that's questionable because we're only allowed to pass human rights laws in Australia which actually enforce the international treaties and covenants that we've ascribed to, and they don't protect gender identity. But anyway, so gender identity became a protected attribute, you could say. More recently, they're passing hate speech laws and vilification laws. Yeah. Vilification laws say that if you say something publicly that could bring ridicule or contempt or hatred to a particular protected group, and gender identity is included as a protected group, you can be sued. Jasmine Sussex made those comments about male chest feeding, and she's in court defending against the fact that she's being accused of vilification.
So let me get this right. Sorry. Yeah. Yep. I have to jump in here. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the only people that could sue her would be a group of males that chest feed.
Well, yeah, it's a male who...
There's some male out there that's taking some type of fucking hormone tablets, whatever the fuck, with pus coming out of his nipples, and he's suing her. That's the only person that could sue her. That in my mind, that's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it should be offensive to every man and every woman who cares about the well-being of children and who also has some kind of appreciation of the sacred intentionality of the design of men and women, because male and female is a divine designation, not a human designation, and it's very much something that is intentionally designed, especially if you have kids. Like, you understand the importance of a woman breastfeeding a child if you have children, but you can take it to a deeper spiritual level, which is obviously women are biologically designed not only to be the portal that I referenced before for a child, a soul
comes through, man. A soul comes through.
Yeah,
it doesn't come through a male.
So we're getting to a place where society is so divorced from reality that instances like this are allowed to occur, and that's how you know we're in trouble.
Well, what they'll do in the future is they will insert a male or someone, whoever, with a fake womb, and they will be able to birth children.
Possibly.
I believe that's the way they're going down, which completely destroys the fabric of everything we've been doing for millennia here, which is male, female, and procreation and the furthering of human life.
Unless there's a point where we become so divorced from what's true that enough people start courageously resisting it.
Uprising. I like where this is
that's
going.
What happens.
It does.
It's happened before. It happened in Rome. It happens
all the time, man. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
But we won't go. That's quite far down the rabbit hole. But we'll save that for a point 3, because I know by the time that we come back and do a 3rd episode, that who knows? Hopefully not, but it might have progressed a little bit further there. But I wish. So when did that court case happen? Is that still ongoing now?
She's currently in court. So yeah, I think it's an ongoing hearing. It definitely hasn't been decided yet. So maybe the next time I come here, we can talk about what
You know
happened.
what? You're going to be a resident lawyer every couple of months. No, that's it. Go talk, find out these cases, read up on them, and let's come back on the podcast and talk. Just don't get me in any trouble. I don't want to get sued because I know myself. I'll get angry and flip out.
Yeah, man. Well, look, it is possible with the new laws, to be honest.
Are they current? Are they current now?
Yeah.
Okay, Nick, can we do some editing, please? Nah, fuck yous over there. I'm not fucking editing nothing.
Yeah, I've had to make a decision that if I know what I'm saying is true, I just have to be okay with the possibility of something like that happening, and then what that will do is it'll help to refine a way for me to serve God. I'm using that term to cover a lot of things.
Yeah.
But in my life, every time that I've made a decision which is aligned with what I know to be true, my life has become more aligned with who I am.
Yeah.
It's become easier. It's become better. Sorry, it hasn't become easier. It's become harder, but it's become better.
It's become better.
Because I'm more aligned with who I actually am and who we actually are. And I feel that I'm doing what I'm supposed to
God
be doing.
bless. And that's what we're meant to do. So just one more thing. So Julia Gillard brought that law in what year?
2013. So she amended
it's been
the
a
Sex
while.
Discrimination Act.
It's been in plan for a long time.
The vilification stuff is more recent than that.
Okay, but you know what? I think that if I keep on going further down this one here without a bit more research and for us to have a bit of a deep dive behind the scenes, I'm going to get in trouble. So we don't want to cancel Stojafy Podcast, but then again, I don't give a fuck. 'Cause you know what? Come out for Stojafy version 2 from prison. Fuck you all. No, I'm being serious.
You probably won't go to, well, at the moment, you probably wouldn't go to prison, but you could be sued for damages and...
how I made that person feel, but I'm not who am I talking about? I don't even know who I'm talking about.
Look, man, if you say something that you know to be true from a place of a genuine understanding of the importance of the divine role of masculine, the divine role of feminine, and the well-being of children who are our future, whatever they can do to discourage that, I think is outweighed by the blessing of actually just saying what's true.
And you know what the beauty thing is? Everything said on the Stojafy Podcast is for comedic and entertainment purposes. So guys, take it as you will, but I'm just a comedian. So all the best tears. And thank you very much, brother. It's always a pleasure. Thank you very much. This is definitely the final goodbye for this time. Now we're finishing cutting this episode. I need to go to the toilet.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Agenda neutral toilet. All right, bro. Take care. All the best to you, man. See ya. All right. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye. See you later.